welcome back to another episode of Quarantined Coaches. This time we are at East Carolina University with head coach Cliff Godwin. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So you are considered a mid-major team, I think, in the eyes of many, right? And then we have the Power Fives. But that's really, I mean, that's something people use these terms all the time. I don't think they really know what these terms mean or what is classified as a Power Five or a mid-major. Can you break down what's the classification? How do we determine that in baseball?
Well, I don't know if it's determined in baseball. I would think it's more football and basketball. You know, you sent me over that question yesterday, and I was kind of mulling over it last night, and I don't have a great answer for you. All I know is we fund our program at East Carolina as an ACC or an SEC program, and we've hosted back-to-back regionals here at East Carolina. So I think it's more of a football basketball term more than a baseball term, because there's a lot of baseball programs that are not in the Power Five conferences that I would consider that are one of the best baseball programs in the country, even though they're not in those conferences.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out low-hanging fruit. I'm just trying to bait you into something there. Figured you'd be a perfect guy for me to try to bait into that question. Yeah, I really have no further to go with that question. It was just to see what I can get out of you.
Well, right. and I don't want to – it's just, to me, probably there is some funding at Power Fives better than what most non-Power Fives are, but there are definitely some non-Power Five baseball programs that fund their baseball programs to win a national championship.
Right. Well, I think the term was basically off of like money or like generating money, right? When you talk about football and basketball.
Right.
But yeah, baseball's a different animal. Okay. You're active on Twitter.
The one thing I was –
Go. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to say on that, just because I was thinking, well, you look at the football playoff scenario, obviously the non-Power Five has never, to my knowledge, gotten to the playoff system. So, but in baseball and basketball, you can get into the NCAA tournament, be a 1 seed, even if you're not in one of those conferences. So I would say it affects football even more than it does basketball and baseball.
Agreed with you on that. Again, I was just baiting you on that first.
Yeah, I'm trying to be politically correct.
All right. You are active on Twitter. I want to talk Twitter for a moment with you. Everything we see out there is home runs, kids throwing 90, exit velos of 157. Is that every recruit that goes to a school like yours, or a Power Five, or what's real and what's not real that we see?
Well, first off, I would say that you need to put into a video if you send it to a coach or if it's on social media. I know, people don't want to see failure, but when we go watch games live, you're going to see kids fail and kids have success. You want to see how they handle both of it. It's not reality when every swing is perfect, every pitch is perfect, every ground ball you field is perfect. So for me, yeah, you can watch some video. A coach sent me some video of a high school kid this morning, and the swings look great on video. 99% of the time, we're not going to make a decision on what we see on a video. We're going to say, hey, that looks good. Now let's go see him play or get him to come to a camp.
What is a good player, though? Right? Because, I mean, what makes a good player? Because I think kids are just so jaded by what they see on social media and think that a good player means that 90 mark, right? Or the exit velos of 100. Like, what's a good high school player look like that could play at a top 25 program?
Well, that's $1 million question, I'm sure. But, yeah, you got to have tools. You got to have some tool set. And I'm going to go, and I'm just going to use one of our players that's on our team. And the first time I saw Alec Burleson play was in the summer going into his junior year. And he wasn't in the best shape. He was a bad runner. He had good hand-eye, good bat-to-ball skills, and he could pitch. He's left-handed, did not throw hard. It was 82, 83, 84 the day I saw him pitch. But he could pitch. He had 3 pitches. So that keeps you on the radar, even though he needed to get his body in better shape. He needed to become more athletic. He needed to become stronger. You wanted the velo to continue to tick up, but you keep following guys like that and they keep getting a little better. And then all of a sudden you make a decision, go, hey, I think if he continues on this track, he's going to be able to help us. And he continued to get better even within our program. And I'll be the first one to tell you what Alec Burleson has done here in 2.5 years with this season being cut short. I don't know if anybody could have envisioned that. And that's a credit to him, his work ethic, his competitiveness. But you also go see guys sometimes and man, he'll throw a 92 and you go, oh, wow. And then he can't throw strikes. So we're not taking a guy that throws 92 that can't throw strikes, because at the end of the day, our game, you have to throw the ball over the white part of the plate. If a guy takes BP and he launches every ball out of the park, but can't put together a good at bat in a game, unless you see something mechanical as a coach that, hey, if we fix this is going to make him, have contact more, then you're not taking him either. I mean, it's what Coach LeClaire used to say back in the days, the 5 o'clock hitters, which the game's at 7. So
Right.
the 5 o'clock hitter is not going to help you win games.
I mean, the question really is just because they think what makes them a good recruit is what they can put on paper, right? Because we're so caught up with this technology movement and exit speeds and launch angles and spin rates and this, and this. I mean, is technology just turning these kids into robots and losing focus of what truly makes a good baseball player?
I do think that, and I say kids, parents, some coaches, they're getting so caught up because it's a measurable. So you can measure velocity, you can measure spin rate, you can, measure speed of how fast you run. The thing I would also tell you is you also can measure how many strikes you're throwing and how many fastball strikes you're throwing, how many breaking ball strikes you're throwing. That's one of the things that we keep here is, what is your strike percentage? What is your first 2 out of the 3 pitches you throw strike percentage? First 3 pitches, in a perfect world, you want to have 2 of them to be strikes, so you're ahead 1-2. Because as you know, for a long time, it's a lot tougher to hit in a 1-2 count than it is a 2-1 count, and that matters. So every kid's different, and I would say that some people, not everybody, because we haven't gone this way, have lost the feel of the game instead of, going, hey, that's not translating. Your swing's not translating from this cage with this great exit velocity, this perfect launch angle, to facing 90. You're getting blown up. How can we fix that? The only issue I ever have with hitting instructors or pitching instructors, they need to go watch the kids play as well. That is a big piece, because at the end of the day, you're not training a cage rat. You're training somebody to go on the field. That's the thing. I work with the hitters. We're training you to face 95 with a good slider and a good changeup, not the guy that's throwing 85 to 88. Because when you want to play professional baseball, you're going to be facing guys that are definitely 90 plus with a good off-speed pitch. Also, as we continue to play in the postseason, you're facing better arms consistently. So why would we build a swing that handles 85 to 88? We need to build a swing that's going to handle the hardest velocities, the best off-speed pitches.
So when you say that some of this stuff is causing kids to lose a feel for the game, what do you mean by feel?
Just knowing how to play the game of baseball. And I think you and I have had this conversation at some point in time.
Street smarts, basically? Is it kind of like street smarts?
I would say it's the common sense of baseball. And it's also just being fundamentally sound. But I've had this story with you, and our players have heard it. I didn't have to bunt in high school, but my high school coach made me know how to bunt. And if I didn't know how to bunt, then I lost swings on the field. He also told me that you've got to be able to hit and run, which is barrel awareness. Hey, you have to be able to know where your barrel is. So when I got to college, I was not as talented as some people, but I was fundamentally sound. I knew how to run the bases, even though I was not fast. I knew how to run the bases. I knew when to take a chance on a dirt ball, when not to. when we're getting kids now, the majority of the kids we're getting, and there's some great high school coaches out there, but you're having to break them down and teach them stuff that probably is not taught in a hitting facility. You got to teach them how to run bases. You got to teach them how to bunt. And we call it just having extra bullets in your gun. As a Packard, Brickhouse, and Burleson, yeah, they're not going to bunt much. But if they play a shift, why would we not, if we need a base runner, drop down a bunt, which doesn't even have to be good, and they just walk into first base? We won a game, and I won't say the opponent, Bryant Packard's junior year. They got a lefty on the mound that ended up being their weekend rotation. And the first pitch of the game, the third baseman is in the shortstop position. Pack bunts. It rattles the pitcher just because, like, holy crap, I'm facing one of the best hitters in the country, and he just bunted. He's at first base now. I'm less comfortable holding the running game, and we ended up scoring 2 or 3 runs in that first inning just because that Packard had that. If he couldn't do that, who knows if he'd have got on or not. And the goal is, Josh, the goal is for offenses is to score runs. That's what the goal is, and I think people are losing the team aspect as well when they're going to all these individual things. And, well, hey, I threw 90 today. This school's going to offer me. There's also a team you're going to have to, when the higher you go, there's a team aspect to it, and you're going to be made to go into a system. So the more bullets you have in your gun as an individual, the more likely you are to get onto the field earlier in your career, in my opinion.
Where in those, we talk about the street smarts of baseball, or the common sense feel for the game, is there one area of the game or another where you feel like we're really losing it in that part of the game, whether it's base running or, whatever aspect of the game?
Well,
Understanding counts, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're losing it. We're just not practicing enough. I think we're just going out and playing, and there's obviously a time to go out and play, but there's also a time to work on your skill. And have done a lot of interviews over the past couple of weeks, and there's a time to put the bat down. There's a time to lift more weights. There's a time to really work on your swing when you're not competing as far as going out and facing a live arm. But the one thing that we do after every scrimmage and every game is, at some point, we go through the things we did well as a team and the things that we need to work on. And a lot of it is some baseball IQ stuff. Hey, we should have moved up on that dirt ball in the first inning, which the next guy got a hit, and that would have drove in a run. If we had a better approach with the runner at third base, less than 2 outs, we'd have got that guy in. We didn't get him in then, and then we didn't get the 2-out RBI. That cost us a run. Stuff like that we go over after every scrimmage and every game, because we're trying to teach them the game of baseball.
Are we worse at one phase of the game than we've ever been before?
Oh, I would say, people say to don't bunt. Hey, bunting's crazy. Well, we led the country in sacrifice bunts last year. Now, some of them we were trying to bunt for a hit in a sack situation, and it ended up being a sacrifice bunt. But we were one of at least the top 16 teams in the country last year. We went to a super regional. So how can you just blanketly say that bunting is not part of the game? I would say base running is definitely a lost art, and it's just a savviness thing. And then I would also say defense. There's only one DH in college. And then when you go play pro ball, just one side has a DH. So what is that? 15 teams have a DH and the other 15 don't. So you've got to be able to play a position.
I do love your guys' bunting station that Palumbo has set up. I asked him a bunt. I didn't even know how much you guys were into bunting. And I asked him when I was there on the college tour a bunting question, and he just kind of, his eyebrows raised at me like, "Oh, you didn't say something about bunting, did you?" Okay. As I mentioned before, you are active on Twitter. You're posting motivational stuff or quotes, or, whether it was a book or a baseball player who did something in the past, which it's not controversial. It's different, though, because most coaches like to hide on Twitter. And I get it. and maybe not hide, but just kind of stay away from hitting enter on anything, right? Um,
It's
so
safer. Hey, it's safer if you do that.
right. So why do you choose to go out there without the life jacket? Like, what is it that makes you motivated to be out front on that platform?
I've actually thought a lot about that question because you sent me this question, and I got on Twitter back at UCF, so sometime between 2009, 10, and 11. I don't know exactly when, and I was a recruiting coordinator at that time, so I was at least hoping to get in front of the curve and be able to touch people that maybe Florida and Florida State's not doing this, so maybe that the kids are getting excited because social media was becoming a thing. Then I went to Ole Miss, kind of carried it over. And for years, I went and I tried to post something every single day. And it would have, in my opinion, nothing to do with the physical aspect of baseball most of the time, more of a motivational thing. And looking back on it, it was to just spread something positive of, hey, there's adversity in life, and hey, we've just got to keep moving forward. And the things that challenge you in life will make you better if your response is good. And that's a very general thought process. I've actually gotten away from that as much now during a time when there's a lot of negative thoughts out in America. I have been more active on it. The human mind to me is the most powerful thing that a human has. And if you think you can, then you can. If you think you can't, you can't, and you'll never do it. And I just want to try to affect people in a positive way. I tell people, and it's probably skewed a little bit, you'd have to ask our team this, but I feel like I coach 95% mental and 5% physical, because everybody, for the most part, that comes into our program can physically do it. What is separating, one individual from another? And it's the mental aspect of the game, whether it be, hey, I'm mentally tougher than the next guy, so I'm very consistent in my preparation. I'm doing stuff before practice. I'm doing stuff after practice. I'm taking care of my academics. So that's a long-winded version of my answer.
No, we're going to go down, but that's good because I do want to go down that road with you. And we'll get away from the technology part of it. I could ask a million more Twitter questions, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to appease Rob Friedman and Flat Ground by doing that right now. So how would you describe your overall coaching personality, which takes into account on the field and off the field with your guys?
I thought about that too, and I'm very competitive. I believe in setting a standard and expectation, and then if we're going to say we're doing something, then we're to execute it at the highest level. Organized. Hey, we have a plan. One of my former players, and this is not a knock against professional baseball, he just said, hey, coach, I really appreciate you guys being organized every single day. We knew exactly what we were going to do every day. We'd go out and accomplish it. And then times professionally, there's not as much communication, so it makes it harder for us to know exactly what we need to do to be successful. Compassionate would be something that probably a lot of people don't see of me. I'm emotional. I care about the kids and the kids that do it the right way within our program. I have more one-on-one conversations with kids today than I ever have, and it's because you're just trying to develop a relationship with them. And they will do more for, and I say me, but it's just for the program and themselves, if they trust you, they believe in you, and even though you're working them hard, they know that you have their best interest in mind. And so it's work, though, like to meet with guys individually. I mean, look, you got 35, 36 players on your team. That's work. And you try to have those conversations. But we had a conversation, Coach Palumbo and I, with one of our players this year, and he was going through some family stuff. And if we didn't have that conversation, we'd have never known he was going through the family stuff, because he wasn't just going to come in here and offer that to us. So I think it's very important for them mentally to be able to come into your office and talk about anything.
I know you talked about it when I visited for the college tour, and you mentioned it today. You're really big on coaching the mind, and you started to touch on it just briefly before, and how you feel like that's where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you feel like you got to do more coaching of the mind than the actual physical skills. Can you just kind of expand on that
Yeah.
more?
Well, I'm gonna get onto my old school. People call me old school, which I view that as a compliment. And the reason I say that is my dad was old school. He was a high school basketball coach, pretty successful. My high school baseball coach was old school. He's one of the winningest coaches in North Carolina in high school baseball. Coach LeClaire was old school. He won a lot at East Carolina. So I view that as positive. As you just said, I'm on social media, but you got to be careful how much you're on social media, because it will, in my opinion, because it affects me this way, you're looking at everybody's best swing, best velocity, best vacation, hottest girl. I mean, every best moment you can put together. And these kids are friends with thousands of people. And I say friends on social media. They're not actually your friend. Like, who's the person that's going to come help you when your car's broke down on I-95? Well, that's Coach Palumbo for me and a handful of people that I'm really close to. But I might get 100 retweets. Does that mean every one of those 100 people are going to come get me out of trouble? No. And I think that's why we have to coach the mind more than ever, because there's so many avenues of people able to touch them. And then there's so many great moments just where, I mean, they're on YouTube or TikTok or Snapchat, and they can start feeling uh, less valuable or not as good. And I think that's a really big problem. I mean, look, if you don't have confidence in this sport, the game will beat you down, buddy, and it will keep you down there. Also in life, and it carries on into life. And that's why I love coaching baseball, because it's a game of failure. And that's what life is. Life is a game of failure.
So you want mentally tough kids. How can you kind of evaluate that part of it when you're looking for recruits? Is there anything you could do to try to figure out if you're going to get a kid who's, at least got that baseline of mental toughness you want?
Well, that's why I said when you go watch them play, you want them to see have success, but you also want to see failure. And sometimes recruiting happens so fast that you don't get a chance to see it. Sometimes it happens so young, you don't get a chance to see it. So the goal is, and we talk about this a lot in our coaches meetings, is to have the majority of your team, because they've been in your program, they understand your culture, they've got the foundation and the expectations of what we're trying to do here. And then if you bring in maybe two or three players that aren't as mentally tough, you're just bringing them up to the rest of the pack, and you just continue to have those one-on-one conversations. And then, a guy like Matt Bridges, who's a fifth-year senior, who's seen everything from Tommy John surgery to closing out a game in a super regional at Texas Tech as a freshman. I mean, he's seen the whole gamut of six players that are younger on, hey, man, this is just what it is, man. This is part of what we do. Is you're going to fail. The key is you just got to get back up, and you just got to go again.
What do you do at ECU to build mental toughness with these guys?
Well, we push them physically, especially in the fall. I mean, that's one thing. And I'm a firm believer in pushing people, because that's what Coach LeClaire did for us when we played here. My parents, my grandparents pushed me in a work style environment in the summers when I was helping out on the farm, because there is a scientific piece to a workout. And I'm a firm believer in that. There's data. You can do it. There's also a mental piece. And I would say is 50-50. And our strength coach, who is knowledgeable from how the body works and how to get guys to be able to do certain things from a functionality standpoint, he's as good as anybody I've ever been around. But me and him have conversations all the time. It's a mental piece and a physical piece and a scientific piece. So we've got to have a good mix of that. And we'll never not push our kids. Yeah. Can you have an injury or two because of that? Yes, you can. And there's workouts that I'm sure pro teams would say, hey, we would never do that. Look, I don't know how many professional teams hang clean. That made me the player I was. And that was the explosive lift, hang clean, and squatting that made me into a powerful hitter. Now, could one guy hurt his wrist doing a hang clean? Sure, he could. But hopefully it's not a season-ending injury. It's just maybe a couple days or a week.
So these kids come to you as top recruits, top prospects. They're all the aces of their high school teams, or they're all the 3 and 4 hole hitters. All the guys playing at your level are studs for their high school and travel team. Then they get to you, and they're just another guy at first. They're amongst other guys that are better than them, right, and older than them. So I'm guessing there's got to be this reality check and this almost little depression phase when they get there of like, oh crap, like I'm not a big star anymore. Like, how do you deal with that?
One thing before I answer that question, because I don't want people to think we just throw them in the weight room, but when our guys get here, new guys in our program, they all are assessed by our athletic trainer and our strength coach to see if they have any deficiencies. And then they learn the lifts before we start throwing a ton of weight up there. So that's back on that question. The question you just asked is probably the $1 million question that every freshman who comes in here, hey, how do we become like Alec Burleson or Bryant Packard as a junior, or Jake Coochman or Gavin Williams? Because when they walk in the door and you go out to practice, everybody's on the same field, everybody's got the same uniform, but there's guys who have been through and know what are coming. And then the freshmen, as much as you try to prepare them, it still hits them between the eyes like, oh my gosh, the workouts are hard. I'm striking out more than I ever struck out before. I gave up a home run to Brick House. You know, my life's coming to an end. So we all talk and have older guys get up in team meetings and talk. You know, Chris Holba, who was a 9th round draft pick after his junior year at East Carolina, he probably had the worst fall as a freshman that I've ever seen. Josh, he would tell you, I don't know if he pitched in an inner squad and we didn't flip an inning. Like, you know, flip the inning, pitch count. I mean, the Purple Gold World Series, he was, and I laugh because he's laughed about it. He was like, Coach, I was so embarrassed because you hardly ever flip an inning in the Purple Gold World Series because they've drafted the teams and I had to flip an inning because we weren't going to get to 7 innings if we didn't flip the inning. And you look and, you know, the next year as a sophomore, he's really good, gets a line drive at Houston, hit off his face, shatters his face, misses a month. So you're talking about the first 2 years of his career really being as rocky as anybody. And then he kept, you know, having that perseverance and kept moving forward. And then you look up his junior year, he's pitching on Friday nights for us and is a 9th round draft pick by the Cardinals.
So how do you manage that for the young guys? You know, like they're coming in and they started at the bottom of the depth chart. They had these huge heads, you know, for the past couple of years at high school, being the big shot on campus. Then they get there and they're not. So like, how do you deal with that deflation for them?
A lot of one-on-one conversations. And that's where it goes back to, you've got to be able to talk to your kids. And if not, you're just going to lose more kids. I mean, there's going to be kids that will wake up and they're going to be homesick. They're going to not do well in school. They're going to transfer when you didn't want them to transfer. They're just not, you've just got to get them to see the light. You just got to see that little flicker where, you know, one day their swing clicks and it goes, oh man, hey, remember that, you know, now that's going to start happening more, where you feel like that's happening like once every 10 swings. Now it's going to start happening 4 out of 5 every 10 swings. So it's just a lot of, that's why it can be very, I mean, it's a heavy workload because, you know, Jeff's talking to him, I'm talking to him, but we just try to have that personal connection so that they know that the light's going to be at the end of the tunnel.
You have, let's say, a junior who's been productive for you for 2.5 years. Just any team, any time you've ever coached, that kid goes, you know, just really hits a slump like he's never hit before. you're forced to take them out of the lineup and give somebody else a chance. How do you deal with that and getting that kid back on track mentally?
I know you want me to continue to give you different answers, but it goes back to communication. And I get up in front of the team all the time and say, every decision that we make as a coaching staff is in the best interest of ECU baseball. Now, some of those decisions are going to negatively influence you as a person. You've never, up until that point when they walk in the door, they've never had a decision that I have made or the coaching staff has made that has negatively impacted them. Once they sit into the first team meeting, there's going to be decisions that are made that will negatively impact them. What I mean by that is there's only one 3-hole hitter. There's only one Friday night starter. There's only, maybe a couple closers. But at the end of the day, you've got to trust that I will do whatever it takes to get you into one of those positions. Our coaches will help you in any way possible. As long as you're showing up every day, you're working hard, you have a great attitude, and you have energy, the coaches are going to be in the fight with you. And that's just what we preach all the time. Now, if I had to do that with a specific person, I would pull them into my office and go, hey, look, I'm going to give you the day off, and I know you want to play. You got to be ready because you could be coming off the bench in the most crucial situation for a pinch hit that could help us win the game. Look, I don't want to notice any body language that is going to tell people that you're not starting today. But you continue to work and you work with me on your hitting, we're going to get you back in there. And look, all you can do is be honest with people, even when the decisions negatively impact the individual.
It's got to be a reality check for high school kids coming into, because they really do go from high school travel, kind of this rec family fun atmosphere, into a business atmosphere. Can you tell the kids, the freshmen that come in on day one, who's a deer in the headlights and who's ready to take this challenge on? Do you guys ever go back into the meeting room after as coaches and be like, did you see his body language during that meeting?
It's not just the coaches, the players will know it too. The players will be the first ones probably just because they're with them all the time. But what we do is just, look, we take more video of body language probably than we ever have because some kids don't even know they're doing it. So we could be videoing the scrimmage and I go, hey, look, cut that clip from the 5th inning. I want to show this body language from this hitter where the umpire called a pitch he didn't think was a strike and his shoulders and his head dropped. Well, we don't want to have any reaction to a bad call because at the end of the day, they're human beings. They're going to make bad calls. You let me worry about the umpires. You stay in green lights while you're hitting so you don't let that pitch negatively influence the next pitch. But we'll show it in team meetings and show positives and then show, hey, stuff that we need to work on.
That's awesome. So you guys cut clips of body language and review that with the players.
And I would tell you this, Josh, and there would be people that disagree with me. That's way more important than showing them an actual swing in a game.
That is awesome. That's really cool. I would love to see one of those highlight clips you got on a kid with terrible body language.
Hey, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would embarrass the kid. So, hey, you're not going to be able to see that.
All right. What is the biggest, and I don't know how to word this, but coachability adjustment that high school players go through when they get to the college level? Is it a matter of they need to have thicker skin, or hopefully you understand what I mean by that question?
No, I understand what you mean. And what you said, thicker skin to be coachable. Being coachable is not actually, as you're taking on the information, you might not enjoy the information that you're getting, but to look the person in the eye, the coach or the player could be coaching another player, and really don't listen to the tone of the message, listen to the information. And we say this all the time in our program as coaches. Don't listen to the tone, listen to the message. Well, if I'm by the third base dugout and I'm needing to get some information to an outfielder, well, there's 35 players on the team, might be music. My voice has to be loud to get that information out to the player, because if I'm coaching that player in practice, like that information needs to get to him right now. It's not something I can wait till after practice because he has to do that drill again at some point in time. We want it to be right. So my voice can be loud, or Coach Palumbo's voice. and make sure you understand the message. And if you don't, then ask a question. See, kids, and I'm not like saying coaches don't coach their kids, and I say hard, but just give them the information. This is what needs to be done. I think sometimes kids hear it, sometimes they don't understand it, and then sometimes they're not held accountable for, hey, I gave you that information and you told me you understood it. I come back out to practice the next day, you're not doing it that way. Now, don't get confused with the result. Sometimes when we have infielders come in, Coach Palumbo, one of his biggest things, you got to play low to the ground. So one of our rules is on the infield, don't let the ball go underneath your glove. The ball can bounce over, take a bad hop, bounce over your shoulder, but the rule is it can't go over your glove. So if we've talked to a kid the day before about playing low, we don't even care if you catch it or not. It's crazy, but this is going to get you into a position to feel more ground balls in the spring that are hit harder. So all you need to worry about is playing low. Don't let the ball go into your glove. And then when you see the ball go into your glove, go, did we have this conversation yesterday? Because I told you, I freed you up and said, you can do a lot of things wrong if you play low and don't let the ball go into your glove. That's the only rule that we have.
We always hear kids are soft these days. I asked somebody the other day about this. What does that mean? Kids are soft these days.
I would say taking what I just said, constructive criticism, and I would say they're more result oriented than they ever have been. I'm not real sure why, other than just watching stuff maybe as a video and everything looks like it's easy and everybody, gets hits. I don't want guys to get hits. I want them to hit the ball hard. You can't control hits. So stop worrying about the results in the game if you're squaring the ball. If you hit the ball hard 4 times in a game and you're out, Coach Godwin's going to keep playing you. If you flare 4 balls, you might be in the lineup the next day, but hey, man, that's fool's gold. That's going to come back to you at some point in time, and it ain't going to work. So you can let mom and dad and everybody in the stands go, hey, you were 4 for 4 today, but you ain't fooling me. You ain't fooling Coach Palumbo, But if you smoke the ball 4 times and you lined out, hey, man, you're playing the next day because you're on the barrel of the bat.
You must demand a lot of passion out of your players, huh? Because you are very passionate about this. What is it like out there at a practice with you? I mean, there's no half-assing it ever. Like
No,
you can't get a drink of water and be a little hot one day. It sounds like this is old school.
Hey, this is and I tell you this, and people might agree, disagree. We're going to put as much pressure as we can on them in practice. But then if you'll come talk to our players who've actually played in real games, ask them how Coach Godwin is in the game. Other than giving them information on how a pitcher's trying to pitch them or, hey, make sure we're sprinting on off the field and we're having good body language, I never yell at a kid for striking out. I never yell at a kid for making an error. I will yell at a kid that doesn't run hard. I will yell at a kid that has bad body language. But, hey, man, nobody's going out there trying to give up a home run or make an error or strike out. And we have prepared them because of what you just said. I'm passionate. I'm intense. Well, all of our coaches are. This is the standard of ECU baseball at practice. Man, we're going, 9,000 miles an hour. We're trying to speed them up all the time so that in the game, it's almost like, oh, wow, this is easier. This is cool, man. This is fun. Boom, here we go.
You pay very close attention to body language when recruiting, then obviously, and how they move around the field. So what is one thing that you can see a player do on the field within reason, not flip out, go crazy, batshit crazy, okay? Within reason, a player can do that you cross them off your list, just not run a ball out to first or something like that?
I'll be the first to tell you that the number one thing before the player does something that maybe I don't agree with, I'm going to look at the rest of the guys on the team and see if they're all doing it, because then the coach is allowing it. So that's the first question. If Jeff calls me or Deets calls me and goes, hey, man, I watched this kid play. He's super talented, but he didn't play hard all the time. What does the coach demand it of him? if the coach doesn't demand it, why would anybody? If my coach didn't demand in high school me to play hard, do you think it's human nature to do what? Go 50%, go 75%. So that would be my first question. And then, look, there's been recruits that I've had on the phone, and I've go, hey, Josh, look, man, I watched you play today. I don't know if you knew I was there or not, but you would not last at one of our practices if that was the speed of your motor. And maybe that's not what you want. But if you want to play at East Carolina, the next time I go watch you, I need to see a difference in A, B, C, and D. And like I said, if they're talented enough, it has nothing to do with their results in that game. It has everything to do with the way they were approaching the game.
Coach Godwin, I appreciate you coming on here and just not really having much of a plan with me. Let's just talk baseball and get into it. It's always better that way. So thanks again, man. I wish you and your family the best. Hopefully we can get back out there soon.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me, buddy.